I'm officially coming up on 3 years of using my iPad mini on nearly a daily basis. I'd say an equal amount of work and entertainment happens here, and after this long time of heavy use, I wanted to share my final long-term review and opinions on it. And not just the technical things like the battery degrading, but good things as well as a few shortcomings that I feel like I only could have found after this long period of use. As much as I absolutely love this thing and how much I praise it, I want to make sure I talk about an equal amount of positives as well as the drawbacks and areas I think there's room for improvement. Here's my 3-year long-term review of my iPad mini. But first, if you're new to my channel, thank you for stopping by. Here we talk about minimalism, frugal living, tech, and things of that nature. So if that sounds good to you and you end up liking the video, be sure to like, and please tell the subscribe button's Italian grandparents you're gonna cook them a pasta dinner, but make sure to bring jarred tomato sauce. Let's get started. And just for reference, this is my iPad mini 6, 256GB in Starlight, Wi-Fi only. I'm gonna start by going over what I love about my iPad mini after 3 years. And the first thing is that it still does almost everything. And this is no exaggeration, it still does almost everything I ever possibly need it to do. And while everything can vary drastically from person to person, I found that I'm rarely, if ever, limited as to what I can do on my iPad mini. Watching shows, designing something in Procreate, and scanning or signing documents to email have never felt limited for the most part. When I think of what I really can't do on here, it's only video editing at the highest level or gaming at the highest level, which aren't going to matter for most people anyways, because it still can do those things, albeit not better than a product like the iPad Pro. I've never had issues juggling multiple tasks, having a split screen window open, or even when I have picture-in-picture open, it never feels like it's straining or working slower. I've played Among Us on here with large groups of people while being on Discord, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't so much more convenient than doing this on a traditional console. And speaking of gaming, I think for someone who gets the occasional gaming itch, this could absolutely get you by. Games like Among Us, Stardew Valley, Hades, and Genshin Impact are all on the iPad mini and run wonderfully. I've also spoken in the past about how I feel like the iPad mini would fare for someone who's a dedicated artist who likes to draw on here. While it's probably not the greatest size for that, which I'll get into later in the video, it still has the capability, and there's no shortcomings when it comes to drawing or graphic design. The next thing I love is that the size is almost perfect. And after 3 years, I can 100% confidently say, this is easily the best iPad for my needs and use cases. And realistically, I could argue that the size alone is a strong enough reason to go with the iPad mini, because it's not the strongest or the most affordable, which I'll talk about later in the video. A while ago, Apple did send me an iPad Pro to use for a little while, and after that experience, I quickly realized it's hard to compare these because they are two totally different products, even though they do a lot of the same things. For me, the iPad mini was the only one I could comfortably use with one hand, fit perfectly in my smaller bag that I bring to work, and comfortably mount in devices meant for other things. For example, this mount was meant for a Kindle, but the iPad mini fits in here quite nicely. And being bedridden for a couple weeks, this was a lifesaver, completely dystopian, but a lifesaver during the recovery process. My iPad mini has never once felt inconvenient to bring anywhere, especially when my laptop may have felt a little too cumbersome. And I really can't stress that point enough. Its small size makes it such an easy thing to leave in my backpack and not even feel like it's there. Whereas I noticed when I was using that iPad Pro for the small period of time, I feel like I was really having to think if it was worth carrying all day, and that has never been the case with my mini. And the last thing I'm going to talk about that I love about it is it can replace a lot of other items. I want to start by saying that this isn't, of course, always necessary, but is definitely something I love about the iPad mini, and kind of goes off the point of it doing almost everything. I've said before that the iPad mini is the ultimate minimalist tool because of how versatile it is, and just having this in my backpack, it's literally a device that creates detailed artwork, plays very well-known games, streams shows with terrible characters like Big Bang Theory, reads full books, scans documents, can be a second monitor for my laptop, just to name a few. And it's not like these are even watered down versions. In all of these cases, they're fully functional versions, as if they were being used on a dedicated gaming device or a dedicated e-reader. Theoretically speaking, it can centralize a few devices you already own onto one small, capable rectangle. That being said, I do think a lot of people prefer to have dedicated devices for specific things, but my iPad mini's versatility is such a positive and it needed to be mentioned. I think most people could get by just with what you're able to do on here. Now I'm going to go into a few things that I don't love and a few shortcomings. And while for me the good far outweighs the bad with my iPad mini, part of my experience after 3 years are dealing with some of those shortcomings. But I'll get the easy one out of the way, and that is first, the price. Which of course I only had to deal with initially, but I need to vent about it a little bit. As of this video, the iPad mini still starts at $500, which is $150 more than the newest standard iPad. I never cared about going into technical specifications in my videos. And yes, the iPad mini is probably more powerful than the standard iPad, but I don't think anyone who cares about the power or speed is going for either one of these. And it really makes me feel like the iPad mini is priced the way it is just to pressure people into getting the Air or the Pro. It almost feels like a convenience fee that's tacked on for it being a mini version. Speaking for myself, I've absolutely got my money's worth several times over. It's just frustrating to see that the mini is probably the least paid attention to and not even the most affordable. The next thing I don't love is that there are instances where the size is actually inconvenient. And while its size for me is arguably its biggest appeal, it has a few times been quite a drawback. I've absolutely noticed times where I wished for a bigger screen, mainly when I'm drawing or editing photos. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say, for someone who's looking to just mainly draw on their iPad or edit photos more than anything, this is most likely not a good choice. To be fair, I can plug this into my monitor for a larger screen, but I've only ever been able to mirror my screen, not necessarily use it as a second monitor. And speaking for myself, there's no way I would be able to use my iPad mini instead of a laptop. I think it's just too small for a primary device, and its limited size, I can imagine getting frustrating quite quickly. The next thing is that the battery is noticeably weaker. Now I know this might sound a little nitpicky and maybe even unfair because naturally batteries degrade over time, but this does stand out. I remember when this was new, I would almost be able to get an entire day of pretty heavy use, whereas now I can almost get through an entire work shift on one charge with the same amount of video playback, give or take. But what is really bothersome about this to me is that on MacBooks and iPhones, the battery health is able to be checked right in the battery settings, and for some unexplained reason, it can't be done on iPad. At least on iPad mini as far as I know. Not that I can take apart this iPad or replace the battery if I wanted to, but it would still give me an idea of how much the battery was degraded over 3 years instead of just guessing. It's not very hard to keep a charger on my person, and I usually do have one wherever I'm using this anyways, but I still noticed it and wanted to mention it. And the last sort of shortcoming here is that it is not a replacement for a laptop. After using this literally almost every single day for 3 years, I feel pretty confident in saying it's not quite a replacement for a laptop. My iPad mini has handled really everything I've ever needed it to, moving files around on my external hard drive and managing large artwork pieces with many layers. I'm just still not sure it's something I would trust as my main work device, mostly because it's limited use on professional applications, which I need for work. I can't edit videos on here the way I can on my laptop, and hypothetically could on an iPad Pro, and while its size is convenient, it doesn't have the convenience of a built-in keyboard and trackpad the way a laptop does. I used to think most people could find some really good use cases for an iPad mini, but as time went on, I noticed that the iPad mini is actually quite niche. Its portability is absolutely its strongest feature, and to me only makes sense for those who prioritize that over everything else. Because it's not the most powerful, not the most affordable, and I even think it's the least popular, which means less attention when it comes to updates or accessories. I feel like I should end this video by reiterating I absolutely love my iPad mini. It is definitely my most used piece of technology, despite the shortcomings I mentioned. For me, the good far, far outweighs the bad. Because of how much use it actually gets, I don't see myself not having one for a while, for the time being. I also don't see myself upgrading until this one is completely destroyed. I actually did drop it filming this video, so that might be sooner than later. Lastly, I wanted to mention my wallpaper store is back up. Everything is completely 100% free to download. I'll have a link for that in the description box if you're interested. Anyways, as always, I appreciate the time you spent here and I appreciate you watching. If you did like this video and you like this type of content, be sure to like and consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you next time.